We would like now, we have a reaction panel. We have three persons who are going to ask our three presenters some additional comments in the reaction panel. First is going to be Ms. Wanda Pérez Alvarez, Esquire. She's the Legal Affairs Director of the Puerto Rico Chamber of Commerce. Then the second reactor will be Mr. Federico de Jesús, Fede de Jesús, as is known around the island, and people know him as Mis Fuentes in Washington, if you know his local nickname, who's the founder and principal of FDG Solutions LLC. And lastly, we'll have Mr. Christian Ramos, who's a business journalist from El Vocero de Puerto Rico, has been around a couple of years. We interviewed us a couple of times, but we were president of the Chamber of Commerce. A very inquisitive and intelligent person, so very happy to have this panel. So Wanda, you are going to ask, I think it's Mr. Fernandez, no?
Yes, right. So thank you, Kenneth, and I want to thank our panel for the wonderful presentations. We are so happy we could get a bunch of such wonderful professionals to gather with us today for this very, very, very important forum. At the beginning of the forum, our president, the president of the chamber, spoke about our 12-point program for economic development in Puerto Rico. And one of our points is parity of funds, because we believe it's so important. Parity of funds for Puerto Rico is so important in our road to economic development. So we'll be working towards it with all our panel, and we'll continue working for it for until we get it, because we think it's as Kenneth said, a matter of fairness. And I think if anyone was undecided or ambivalent about the fairness and the need for equality in Puerto Rico in terms of social benefits, you only need to see our panel or read Judge Young's decision in the Peña Martinez case. He describes very vividly how the federal government discriminates against Americans who live in Puerto Rico just because they live in Puerto Rico, and why there is no rational basis for this discrimination. He concludes finding that this type of discrimination is unconstitutional and a breach of the American ideal of fairness we all hold so dear. We know Judge Young understands what's going on in Puerto Rico, with 44% of people living under the poverty level, 57% of those being children. And how American citizens, poor American citizens, are receiving less protection from programs that are specifically designed to help the poor. Poor Puerto Ricans have less money to cover their food and their health benefits because they live in Puerto Rico. The economic implications of these are huge and unfair, as we saw previously. Now, that is something we can't change locally, right? I mean, we're talking about federal programs. So my question to you, Mr. Fernandez, is, with a presidential election coming up and a seat in the Supreme Court possibly being filled by an ultra-conservative judge, how do you see this issue progressing after November? I don't know if Mr. Fernandez is still with us.
He was there. Espérate, déjame buscarlo. Dolly, ¿estás por ahí?
I see, yeah, he's still.
Sí. Pues apparently he went out. I don't know if any one of their panelists, Lilian or Pando, quieren react to Wanda's question, how they see the election and affecting Puerto Rico, whether Mr. Trump remains as the president or Vice President Biden becomes the president.
I mean, I'll comment on that real quick. I think I'll comment on the election perspective. I think it's critical. This is a critical election for us. When you look at, and I'm trying to, our coalition is bipartisan, so I'm going to stay as bipartisan as I possibly can. We saw a Democratic platform, and Federico will appreciate this. I actually went back, Federico, and looked up about the last 4 Democratic platforms. There had never been a platform that was as explicit and as detailed on Puerto Rico. So first of all, we have our own independent plan, but in addition to that, the Democratic platform, the document that came out, specifically shares and focuses on federal benefit parity and mentions the programs that specifically we're talking about today. And I think that that's a powerful message for our community around the importance and the lens and focus on Puerto Rico during this particular presidential election, and then also obviously what happens in the Senate and obviously, you know, some of the House races. And there's people on, you know, obviously here who probably are even following it more closely. But I think this is
right
to really continue to.
Hi.
Okay. I was saying this is a critical election for us. We can continue to drive these changes, these legislative changes that we need for Puerto Rico. And as it relates to the Supreme Court, yeah, it's concerning. I have to say that. It is concerning because I believe, and I know in my heart, that these cases will be challenged all the way up to the Supreme Court. However, I think that when you look at, and I'm not a constitutional lawyer, I'm not a lawyer at all, Wanda, but when you look at these cases, it is very difficult to state that citizens who reside in Puerto Rico and the territories do not deserve equal protection under the law. So any judgment contrary to supporting the district court and the Court of Appeals would almost be, I'm going to use a strong word, obscene for them not to find with the lower courts.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Lillian. I just wanted to leave you, I left this out, and I think this is very important. The Chamber commissioned a study where we found that 88% of people that received the PAN or NAP said that they don't have enough money to eat. I mean, 88% of the people don't have enough money to eat. I mean, that's just, it just emphasizes your point that because we are more people, then we have to eat less. So thank you very much for your participation. I'll leave Kenneth to continue.
Thank you, Lillian, and thank you, Wanda. Now we go with Federico de Jesús, to his friends. Actually, he's going to ask Lillian as well, I think. So, Fede, the floor is yours.
So I was actually just asked to make a comment, and Lillian's comment actually segues into what I was about to say. But first of all, I want to thank the Puerto Chamber of Commerce, Kenneth, Wanda, Sandra, for inviting me, for putting this forum together, but for many years of consistent advocacy in Washington, D.C. So thank you for your work. And I do want to especially recognize Javier, Lillian, and Laura, who also are every day advocating in Washington, D.C. Whenever I talk about food security or nutritional assistance or EITC with, member of Congress or staff, they immediately say, well, did you talk to Lillian? Did you talk to the coalition? Did you talk to CPPV? Did you talk to Hispanic Federation? So that consistent advocacy and the fact that they've expanded the level of advocacy, not just to Puerto Ricans and Latinos, but to other groups in the United States. Because obviously there are a lot of people interested in this issue, but never before had a coalition of this magnitude been formed. And I really want to emphasize that that's been a game changer I think that after the hurricane and the battle to win a me $600 million, but winning that battle, I think created a lot of political power for this cause. So briefly, I just wanted to mention, as everyone knows, we're not sure how these court cases are going to turn out. So the need for this group and those involved to continue advocacy in Congress in the next administration is key. I was going to do a quick contrast between Biden and Trump. As we know, the Trump administration appealed the Ello case and asked for a stay in the Peña Martinez case. Biden, as Lillian said, supports parity in all these funds. In the case of Medicaid funding, Trump not only has not supported parity, but he actually interjected to cut Puerto Rico's recent Medicaid allocation from $12 billion to $5.2 billion, I believe. So those are the actions that he has taken. I do want to mention that, you know, achieving parity in Medicaid and in SNAP and the ELS and other programs that we've mentioned, SSI, would definitely go a long way to help Puerto Ricans in need, especially given all of the data that the previous panel reported. But we also have to recognize that Puerto Rico briefly after Hurricane Maria has had close to parity levels in terms of Medicaid and NAP. So as Javier mentioned, there aren't any these are not silver bullets, but the only silver bullet that we do have that it will be very hard, but we need to fight for is job creation. There's no substitute for that. And I do believe that given the island's unique, you know, language, socioeconomic and juridical realities, those economic tools at the federal level that Puerto Rico needs need to be tailored to the island's unique situation. That's basically, you know, the comment I wanted to make, and I really want to encourage everybody to keep fighting for these programs, for a broader job program for Puerto Rico, because at the end of the day, without jobs, the economy won't be able to get back on its feet. But in the meantime, having parity in these programs would definitely lift a lot of people out of poverty and need, especially in this time of the pandemic, and in Puerto Rico, especially since we've been in a depression basically for 15 years. I know that that's not part of the equation, but if anybody has questions.
José Enrique, ¿volviste?
Sí. Can I repeat the question or?
No, mira, oye, más o menos Lilian more or less answered the question. The question is if you saw any difference between who wins the election.
Can I mention something on Biden? I don't know if you saw his plan for the following years.
Mm-hmm.
It was exposed a month ago, and he has said that he will change the Secretary of the Treasury, of Justice, okay, in case anything this gets to the Secretary of Justice, because he doesn't believe that we should be appealing to the federal court, that our case is very strong. And one thing I want to mention is recurring. All these funds are recurring, huh? All of the things that Congress approves are just for 1 year or for the other year or a subsidy, yeah? These funds are recurring every year. So if you take 10 billion, the multiplying effect is 4 billion. I mean, it's 4 times. So
4 times, yeah.
8 billion. Okay, so it really will bring a lot of prosperity to Puerto Rico in addition. For everybody will benefit from this money coming into the hands of the poor.
No, yes, we concur with that, and that's the reason why we are involved in that, being a business league, because even though it's a human situation that needs to be worked on with, it will have certainly an impact in the island and on the environment, economic environment.
Maybe this will be the time, or the first time, that the most poorest people brought the economy to a new high.
We hope, and I mean, as Lilian and Wanda were mentioning, it's tragedy that people don't have enough money to food, and they have to select between eating and getting other things.
I want to, if I could, very quickly, I'll be quick. Something that Federico said, which I think it resonates with me a lot. Sometimes when we work and we're doing the work around getting the increased food benefits, you'll see comments come in, right? And obviously, no one wants people to have reliance on these types of federal benefits programs. It's not like you want people to continue to be and live in poverty. However, my thing is, for me, it's always parity and equity. Let the systems flow in an equitable way, and then let Puerto Rico work on its economy, its jobs, its infrastructure, its industries, but do not punish us because we are a territory. And there have been, and there were, a series of punitive cost containment strategies that were put into place in the 70s and the 80s, and they continue even today to keep Puerto Rico outside of what they're even providing to other territories. So I'm all in agreement. I'm not like, oh, let's keep escalating these benefits because we want people to do what, you know, to live in poverty. No, I just wanted us to have a choice as a community and as a people, and to be able to have that equity with everyone else. Manifest destiny, Federico. Right? Manifest destiny. We will master our destiny as a community, but don't treat us like second-class citizens, because we're not.
Okay, now we'll go with Christian Ramos. Christian, are you there?
Yes.
From El Vocero. Thank you, Christian.
Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. I'm Christian Ramos, a business and economic reporter for El Vocero, Puerto Rico. And I would like to start saying that the disparity in the federal funds that Puerto Rico receives for its health system becomes more relevant now with the pandemic that has affected almost everything, including how economic development is achieved. Before the COVID-19, a country's income level determined its health conditions, but now with the COVID-19, country's health level determines how much their economies can grow and their ability to recover from the crisis. In fact, various economists and some studies locally conducted agrees that Puerto Rico's economic recovery will be more complicated than other US jurisdictions just because of its underfunded public health systems on the edge of a financial collapse. This situation brings other problems to the island, having in mind that health is important to promote economic development. The lack of money to establish a robust and efficient health system can increase the inequality and poverty levels and decline the island's productivity and competitiveness, which will lead to less money to the government reserves and make the debt restructuring impossible. According to the United States Office of Government Accountability, if Puerto Rico were treated the same as any other state, the federal Medicaid spending will be up to $2.1 billion per year. Right now, the funding level is 60% lower. Puerto Rico spent over $1.4 billion to provide health services to more than 1.4 million low-income beneficiaries, and only received 4 million from the federal government. As I said, health is very important to manage the coronavirus economic impact that right now exceeds $12 billion. With an increase in health funds, many of the problems of the health problems in Puerto Rico will be solved. And this also will represent a better opportunity for the economic viability of the island. Thank you very much.
Yeah, any question to Pando regarding health, Christian, or you're okay?
I'm okay.
Any comment, any reaction to Christian's comment, Roberto?
Yes, thank you, Christian. I couldn't agree more. We typically say there's no economic recovery without fixing healthcare in Puerto Rico. I'll show you the numbers. You know, we work with 1/3 of the average resources for healthcare around the nation. And you see that, as I mentioned, in, I would say, 3 areas, that when we have the COVID, when we have Hurricane Maria, everything comes back and everything shows, unfortunately, all the, you know, how deficient, how behind we're in certain elements. And I'm talking about infrastructure, physical infrastructure, even the hospitals, the clinics, administrative infrastructure, how healthcare is administered. You need to wait. People go to their specialist visits at 4 a.m. They do online for 5 hours. You know, there's not enough resources to administer healthcare as it should be administered, and obviously compensation and healthcare professionals. So the quality, we do have actually 94% of our population is covered in some way by a health plan and by health coverage. But what we don't have is that resilient, that basic quality in terms of infrastructure, both physical, information technology, administrative infrastructure, and also compensation wise, or that's a huge problem. We certainly have difficulties in certain specialties. We study the same, we have the same academic preparation, we take the same boards, medical boards, our physicians do. Our hospitals go through the same accreditation process, but we get paid, half. It depends on the program. And overall, as I said, 1/3 per person of the resources compared to the state. So certainly there's no economic recovery. There are things like I mentioned, for example, the Part B being paid in Medicaid that's not paid for the elderly and poor in Puerto Rico. The Part D LIS, which is a critical topic in the Peña Martinez. What that does is that we have to take money from Medicare Advantage and use it to pay for the drugs, for the prescription drugs that the LIS is not covering in Puerto Rico. What that means is that the budget that we have from Medicare Advantage, that as I showed to you, is also limited. We cannot devote to provider compensation, to paying hospitals, to physicians, because we're paying for the prescription drugs that are not paid by the Part D LIS. So everything is sort of connected. We think we're doing a lot with a lot less. So we do think that the dollars that we're able to get every step in terms of the dollars, incremental dollars that we're getting healthcare in Puerto Rico can be well spent. So, and that goes also to our own task, right? And there was a lot of comments recently and public discussion about funding approved and not being used. And I think that certainly has to be something that us in Puerto Rico, both private and public sector, we really need to make sure that whenever we take critical steps to move forward in getting the fair funding that we should get, we use it in the right way. We don't have the luxury of returning anything. And it's about the citizens' right, about entitlement, about what the lawsuits are about. I don't think it's about, it's not just about Puerto Rico. It's not about treating Puerto Rico differently. It's actually about treating citizens differently. About, if you move to Puerto Rico, no matter if you're from Puerto Rico or from anywhere, you automatically lose all these benefits. So it's certainly a very critical point that we hope to keep pushing as a community and getting more results.
Well, guys, thank you, all the panelists. Thank you for the reaction panel. It was great. We could be speaking probably for a couple more of hours. We don't have a couple more of hours. Yeah. We are already 10 minutes over the time limit. So my thanks to everybody for your participation in the forum. And as I mentioned before, for your assistance regarding this very critical and important matter. And we'll keep fighting the fight together with all of you. It's an honor and a privilege to have been able to work with you guys. Okay. Thank you for the participation in the forum.
Thank you.